Greetings, fellow seekers of the unknown, and welcome back to Authentic Tales YT. Today we're embarking on a journey into the enigmatic realms of history to unveil not one, not two, but three spine-tingling tales that have baffled and intrigued minds for decades. So grab your detective hats and join me as we delve into the mystique surrounding these chilling mysteries. So without further ado, let's start our first story. Who put Bella in the Wych Elm? It is a mystery that has everything. Witchcraft, spies, Nazis, taunting messages to the police, and a man driven insane by guilt. It began around dusk on April 18, 1943. 4 teenage boys from the village of Hagley had scouted Hagley Woods. It was during World War II, and food was scarce. The boys had been there illegally, trespassing on land that belonged to Lord Cobham. They were poaching game and raiding birds' nests. Presently, the boys came across a large wych elm. They thought it might be a likely place for a bird's nest, so one of the boys, named Bob Farmer, decided to climb it. He pulled himself onto the lowest branch and looked down. Inside the tree trunk, he saw a large hollow. There was a flash of white inside. Perhaps an egg? He couldn't be certain due to the poor light. He reached his hand into the hollow, got a grip on it, and pulled it out. What he saw nearly made him fall. It was a human skull. The boys left the woods in a hurry that night, driven by terror and fear of getting caught. Before parting ways, they made a pact to keep silent about what they had found. Trespassing on the land of a local noble was a serious offense. However, pacts of secrecy rarely hold, especially among children. One of the boys, Tom Willits, eventually told his father, who contacted the police. The area around the wych elm was soon cordoned off, and a police constable was sent up a ladder to peer into the hollow. What he found was not just a skull, but an entire skeleton. The bones were carefully extracted from the tree and sent to Birmingham University for examination by Home Office pathologist Professor James Webster. He determined that the remains belonged to a woman around 5 feet tall, in her mid-30s, who had been dead for at least 18 months. She had been placed inside the tree shortly after her death, as putting her there after rigor mortis had set in would have been impossible. The woman had given birth at least once in her life. Tufts of hair attached to the skull were mid-brown. Her teeth were irregularly shaped with slightly overlapping front incisors. She had undergone dental work, including the removal of some molars. The cause of death was difficult to ascertain due to the absence of obvious physical trauma. A piece of taffeta cloth had been torn from her skirt and stuffed down her throat, indicating possible asphyxiation. Another macabre detail was that one of the woman's hands was missing, later found buried not far from the wych elm tree. Professor Webster concluded that foul play was highly likely in the woman's death. I cannot imagine a woman accidentally slipping in there. Neither do I think it reasonable for a woman to crawl into that place to commit suicide, he said. This left the Worcestershire police with a murder to solve. They began by trying to identify the victim, focusing on the unique dental work. Despite contacting dentists in the area, they were unsuccessful. Simultaneously, officers combed through missing person reports in search of a match for the victim's physical appearance. This proved challenging due to the wartime context where people often went missing or were killed in bombings. One lead emerged from a pair of crepe-soled shoes found with the body. They were traced to the Waterfoot Company in Lancashire and were sold exclusively at a market stall in Dudley, about 11 miles from Birmingham. While detectives tracked down the buyers of most pairs, this did not lead to an identification. As time passed, public interest in the case waned as larger war-related stories took precedence. 6 months after the body's discovery, a strange graffiti appeared on a wall in the area, written in chalk. Who put Lubella down the wych elm? This marked the first time a name was associated with the deceased woman. Similar messages followed, all etched in chalk by the same hand. Eventually, the graffiti consistently read, Who put Bella in the wych elm? Police were unsure whether this was a clue, a taunt, or a prank. The graffiti images appeared in newspapers, urging information from the public. No one came forward to recognize the writing. The war ended, and efforts were directed toward rebuilding. The Bella case faded from public attention, even though the graffiti artists sporadically reappeared to pose the enigmatic question. To this day, graffiti occasionally surfaces in the area, asking, Who put Bella in the wych elm? The answer remains elusive. Several theories emerged over the years. Anthropologist Professor Margaret Murray proposed a ritualistic killing involving witchcraft. She cited Bella's severed hand as evidence, claiming it was related to an occult practice known as the Hand of Glory. The victim's burial in a Wych Elm was also deemed indicative of a ritualistic slaying. Professor Murray suggested Bella may have offended a local coven and was executed as a result. Another theory involved espionage. During World War II, German spies were active in Britain, scouting targets for bombing. A letter from Anna of Claverley claimed Bella was a spy killed by a Dutch national named Van Ralt. This was allegedly witnessed by her husband, Jack Mossop, who had been drawn into espionage. However, this theory lacked supporting evidence. Decades later, an MI5 document indicated that a German spy named Joseph Jacobs had mentioned a German actress and singer named Clara Bauerle, who had parachuted into the West Midlands. Some aspects matched Una Mossop's story, but discrepancies emerged. Clara was tall, unlike Bella, and had died in Berlin in 1942. Efforts to identify Bella through DNA were hindered by the disappearance of her bones. They were initially donated to Birmingham University, then appeared in the Birmingham City Police's Black Museum until they vanished. An appeal to museums in 2023 aimed to locate Bella's remains, but as of now, the mystery of Bella in the Wych Elm remains unsolved. Brace yourselves for an unprecedented journey through time itself, as we unravel the perplexing tale of a supposed time traveler from the past. But first, if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, so you won't miss out on any of our mind-bending investigations into the unknown. And now, without further ado, let's dive into the second baffling tale. Time traveler from the past. On a summer's day in 2006, police in Kyiv, Ukraine, received an unusual call from pedestrians in the city center reporting a distressed young man. This man seemed to have suffered a breakdown, walking from person to person, asking the same question repeatedly, "What is this place?" Responding to the call, a couple of officers were dispatched to investigate. The young man was visibly distressed, unable to comprehend where he was or how he had arrived there. His appearance was strikingly out of place, wearing clothing from a bygone era and carrying an antique-looking camera. Identifying himself as Sergei Ponomarenko, the young man produced an ID card from the Soviet Union, a country that had ceased to exist 2 decades prior. According to the ID, he was born in 1932, making him 74 years old, yet he appeared to be in his 20s. When asked about the date, he confidently stated it was April 23, 1958. This led the officers to believe he might be mentally ill. They transported him to the mental ward of a nearby hospital. Dr. Pablo Kudrikov, examining Sergei, initially considered him delusional due to his firm belief in the year 1958. Kudrikov engaged in conversation, discovering that Sergei had left his house with a camera to take a walk when he noticed a bell-shaped UFO in the sky. Sergei claimed to have taken a photo of the UFO just before he experienced an unusual event that led to his current state of confusion. Dr. Kudrakov, a photography enthusiast, noticed the camera Sergei carried was an old and rare Yashima Flex model, which should have used a type of film from 1956. Yet the film appeared pristine and undamaged. Developing the film revealed a series of photographs depicting Kyiv streets from the 1950s, including Sergei himself alongside a woman he identified as his girlfriend, dressed in period-appropriate attire. The same outfit he wore was captured in the picture, consistent with his appearance upon arrival. One photo, however, stood out. It depicted the bell-shaped UFO Sergei had described, strengthening his story. According to Sergei, the UFO had suddenly appeared above his apartment building, and he had captured the image just before his strange experience and subsequent arrival in the present. Dr. Kudrikov began to consider the possibility that Sergei's story might not be delusional, but rather an extraordinary case of time travel. He pondered Einstein's theory of relativity, suggesting that if Sergei had indeed been aboard the UFO, his experience might have caused time to pass differently for him than on Earth. Such an occurrence could explain his displacement in time. The next morning, Dr. Kudrikov arrived at the hospital to find that Sergei had vanished without explanation. Hospital security footage showed no sign of his departure. As the authorities delved deeper, they discovered records of Sergei Ponomarenko's disappearance in 1960 and traced down his girlfriend, who corroborated aspects of his story. She mentioned receiving a letter from Sergei in the 1970s, claiming to be living in the year 2050. The letter contained a photograph with a skyline vastly different from the one she recognized. The story of Sergei Ponomarenko has been presented as a compelling account of time travel and alien encounters. However, upon closer examination, certain inconsistencies arise. The story was first featured on a Ukrainian TV show about aliens, and some elements were reenactments. Glaring errors in the footage and photographs were noted. The producers agreed of reenactments, but insisted that the Sergei Ponomarenko existed in the past, and his girlfriend showed them the letter he had sent her after disappearing the second time. While the authenticity of Sergei's story remains uncertain, the concept of time travel is not entirely implausible within the framework of theoretical physics. Scientific papers have explored the potential for traveling to the past or future based on Einstein's theory of relativity. While the practical feasibility remains speculative, the fascination with time travel endures. The Boy in a Box. The enigmatic tale of the unidentified child in Philadelphia unfolds with the involvement of a college student named Frederick Benosis. While traversing a field near Susquehanna Road, Frederick stumbled upon a cardboard box one frosty day. Within the container, he made a startling discovery: tiny, bony arms of a toddler protruding from it. Initial skepticism led him to believe it was a doll, yet an inner curiosity compelled him to pry open the lid, revealing a sight that shook him to his core. Overcoming his initial fear, Frederick eventually reported his chilling find to the Philadelphia police, recounting how he had come across the box while in pursuit of a rabbit. Authorities promptly responded to the scene, where they encountered a young boy, likely aged 4 to 6, confined within the box. The child's diminutive size could easily have led passers-by to mistake him for a discarded toy. The space was so tight that the boy's limbs and extremities had been contorted to fit. Signs of malnutrition and stunted growth were evident in his remains, which were found unclothed, wrapped only in a blanket. Additional clothing articles were strewn nearby, including an oversized scarf, a hat, and a handkerchief with a G insignia at one corner. These scant items constituted the limited evidence available for investigators to probe the mystery surrounding the boy's demise. Initially attributing the boy's death to malnutrition, exposure to harsh weather, and starvation, authorities eventually unearthed a different truth. Their investigation unveiled that the boy had succumbed to fatal blunt trauma inflicted upon his head. The presence of numerous marks across his body indicated severe beatings prior to his demise. Curiously, his hair had been freshly cut, and his fingernails meticulously groomed, as if he were being readied for a significant occasion. Unfolding events revealed that Frederick was not the first to stumble upon the harrowing scene. An initial discoverer, a muskrat trapper, had opted to conceal his find out of fear that his illegal traps would come under scrutiny. However, his reluctance proved detrimental, exposing the body to cold conditions for an additional 2 days before Frederick reported the discovery to the police. Authorities also uncovered inconsistencies in Frederick's account, as he initially misled them about his activities in the area, admitting later that he had been observing girls in the vicinity. Despite his missteps, it was Frederick who ultimately led the police to the scene, sparking a thorough investigation. A pivotal lead emerged as authorities endeavored to trace the origin of the cardboard box. They ascertained that it had originated from a J.C. Penney store, used for transporting a baby bassinet. Further inquiries revealed the store's connection, with 12 cash-paying customers purchasing bassinets in close proximity to the crime scene. These transactions, however, proved nearly impossible to trace. The investigation also zeroed in on a blue corduroy hat discovered near the cardboard box. This hat was linked to Hannah Robbins, proprietor of a small hat-making business. Hannah recalled a custom order for the specific hat, yet, as with the previous lead, payment had been made in cash. Additional disturbing details surfaced regarding the child's ordeal prior to his death and subsequent concealment. Strands of human hair clung to his body within the box, while his shaven head bore evidence of both yellow marks and abrasions. Particularly distressing were the bloodied bruises on his face and the surgically incised cuts on his ankle and groin. These latter marks suggested a prior surgical intervention. In the backdrop of Philadelphia's chilly February weather, determining the precise time of death proved challenging. The medical examiner, however, ventured an estimate that the boy had passed away anywhere from 3 days to 2 weeks before his discovery. The tale of Philadelphia's mystery child remained perplexing, until the day of the 23rd of January, 2023, Philadelphia police, employing DNA analysis, identified the boy as Joseph Augustus Zarelli, 65 years after his body was discovered. Nevertheless, The identity of his parents remained undisclosed, as Joseph's surviving siblings, now aged 65, held connections to his story. The revelation of Joseph's birthdate, January 13th, 1953, and he was 4 years old at the time of his death, further solidified the story's intricate chronicle. And there you have it, a glimpse into the mystery and unexplained. Remember, the world is full of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Stay curious and keep exploring.